RealGM Radio is on YouTube. Before we jump in, do me a favor, subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel to catch the podcast when we record live. Tune into the best segments and join the RealGM Radio community. You can find us on youtube.com/@RealGM Radio. Adam Mares from DNVR Sports and the All-NBA podcast with Tim Legler is joining me today in a second to talk about the NBA Finals. What could be the start of a Thunder dynasty, Tyrese Halliburton's devastating injury, Kevin Durant to Houston, and some offseason topics. Then we're going to dive in and discuss our guys in the NBA draft. It's all coming up on RealGM Radio. All right, let's do it. Welcome to RealGM Radio. I am Wes Goldberg here with Adam Mares from DNVR Sports, the All-NBA podcast, a must listen on all fronts. One of my favorite guests here. Adam, thanks so much for jumping on the day after the end of the NBA season.
Yeah, man, my old podcasting partner. Wes, you don't know this. Okay. You are my hair inspiration. I tell you this, I think, every single time, but look at this. I'm growing it out. You could see what's going on. You could see the style here. I'm not as good looking as you though, so I'm a little worried that this is going to not work out for me.
No, it's very sophisticated. I think you're starting to get like you're streaming live in the afternoons pretty much every day now. You've got to have like TV hair. You got to.
This is what I'm saying.
You've upgraded the setup. You've got the All NBA posters in the back. You have some sort of bamboo situation going on. It's nice. It's nice.
Here's the last piece, man. It's coming.
It's coming around. So we are, like I said, recording this Monday after Game 7 of the Finals. Thunder win the championship. Congratulations to them. Best team in the NBA. I thought wire to wire, super deserving as a champion. There's a ton of little things we can get into. We'll talk about Tyrese Halliburton's injury. We'll also talk some offseason stuff, Durant. And then I'm really excited to have you on. I had you bookmarked in my sort of planner here for a long time, and I actually should have reached out to you sooner. And I'm really glad you were able to come on because you have something that I love that you do, the My Guys thing. You and I wouldn't consider us draft experts. I think we're sort of like, we kind of skim the surface. We kind of find guys that we like. We do a little bit of stuff leading into the draft, and we get some decent opinions and things like that going into this thing. But I know you're going to fall. I know you have guys that you like. I don't know who they are, but I know you've fallen in love with a handful of guys. I've fallen in love with a couple of guys in my cursory research here. So we'll talk about our guys in the NBA draft here a little bit later in the show, because I can't do a full NBA draft pod the way that the pros do it. I'm not even going to fake it, but you and me, we could do it in the way that we do it. So, but let's start with Oklahoma City. They win the championship. What stood out to you about their season? What do you think about when you think about the Thunder season?
You know, what I think about is that the most impressive part about this team to me is their roster construction. And I'm not trying to take anything away from the players or from Shai or any of this. To me, this is not the first team, but it's the most recent team where I felt like the general manager was almost the star. And I don't mean the star as in the front-facing guy. That's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But I mean star as in, I say, what is it about this team that makes them impressive? It's that they were incredibly conceived, constructed, and nurtured. You know, the culture that they built and the way they assembled their roster and their assets moving forward is the story. So to me, Sam Presti, this is Sam Presti's championship more than anybody else's. Some people I know will disagree with that. It doesn't take anything away from how great Shai was or how great, any of the players were individually. But that's what will stand out to me, is that we're in the era where the general manager feels so important. This new CBA, how you think about the evolution of the game and all those things are so important. And Sam Presti just did an unthinkable job in getting the second youngest champion of all time put together. And, we're pretty dominant, and at least in the regular season. I think they were significantly less dominant in the postseason, which is interesting, but they just were so wonderfully put together that they feel, I know we had the light years Warriors. They were light years ahead of everybody else. I think the Thunder feel light years ahead of everyone in this current environment, in large part because of Sam Presti's brilliance.
And there's definitely some luck involved, right? You kind of fall backwards into this. Everything that you were able to get from the Clippers, none of this happens if Shai Gilgeous-Alexander isn't coming over in a Paul George trade. None of this happens if Kawhi basically tells them to do it, right? Like Kawhi Leonard gets a lot of the credit, and this is certainly indirectly. The take of Sam Presti is such a great one, though, because is he the most famous general manager we have in sports right now? Has he surpassed sort of like the Theo Epstein, where it's just like
in sports,
name a general manager in sports And it feels like Presti is the number one guy. He has sort of become a star. And he's got the glasses, the suit, super tailored kind of look. Like he's built for TV, right? He's got the hair. He's got it going. Yeah, I think Sam Presti is like the household name in terms of GMs.
It might be. I mean, Daryl Morey had a run there for a while. Sam Hinkie, I think, was as famous as anyone, not necessarily for success, but for, how unique his approach was. You have Pat Riley. I mean, your guy who's been pretty, just in terms of decision makers, has been pretty iconic. But at this very moment, Presti does seem like the quintessential NBA general manager of 2025. Meaning every margin matters. The guys that are making trades. You mentioned the Shai trade, and you said a little bit of luck. I don't know that it was luck. I think that was a very shrewd move. Part of being a great GM is always knowing who the most desperate team is in the right moment and then going after them. He did that, getting Shai, who, by the way, I don't think it's that much luck. He was a really good player. I think you could see the upside after his rookie season. So that to me wasn't crazy. And then he just knew that, hey, the Clippers right now need to get Paul George. This is a need, and they're willing to part ways with all this stuff. When he got Alex Caruso, there was a little bit of, okay, that's a team in Chicago. That's the fish at the table, so to speak. They want to get rid of this guy. We'll get rid of somebody who's expendable to us. And then all the assets they collected along the way, they made a dozen little deals that armed them with the capacity to make the big ones. And to me, it's just not luck. It's opportunistic. It's smart. It's forward thinking.
Yeah, and you can look back on what they got for the Shai trade, which has been done a million times during these finals. But what I think gets lost in that a little bit is since the Shai trade, we've had Rudy Gobert go for the 1 million first-round picks, Mikal Bridges 5 first-round picks, Desmond Bane recently 4 first-round picks. It's kind of become pretty common for those big hauls to come in a trade. That was not the case when Paul George got traded. And what Sam Presti did that summer was just keep asking for more, where it felt like a lot of GMs out of like respect or whatever it might be would just stop at a point. And he was like, well, can I also have this? Can I also have this? And he just kept asking for more. And eventually the couple of Clippers were just like, yeah, I guess like we have to get Kawhi. And this is the only thing that is going to enable us to do it. And that was in a weird way, pretty revolutionary at the time to just say, no, we want all of it. We want all of it. We're not going to be nice about this. We don't care what fair is. We want all of it because we kind of have all the leverage in these conversations.
Yeah. And valuing that those picks weren't just about players, right? We're just going to get players, but that those were the assets that were needed. And I think the Clippers probably didn't have enough respect for that when they made that trade. Because if you remember, I mean, nobody will forget where everybody was when those trades went down. Everybody was in summer league, or the NBA media was in summer league for that one.
I was in the lobby of the Cosmopolitan downstairs before I worked my way up to the Chandelier Bar when it happened.
The famous Chandelier Bar, summer league staple. But yeah, so when that happened, people were talking about the Clippers. It was, oh my God, the Clippers just assembled the super team. Not, oh, did they spend too many assets? It was the Clippers just pulled off the unthinkable. And to me, the second part of this is Sam Presti built a team very deliberately that was ready for where the league was going. And what it was you look at how the league was evolving with switching and how teams have to score and what do you take away? And he said, we're going to have a roster full of guys who can guard one-on-one on the perimeter. Because if you have that, you kind of throw the ultimate wrench in whatever it is that teams are trying to do. We now have guys who can sit down and guard, so we're going to have a good defense. He didn't just have a good defense. He built an elite defense, one of the best we've ever seen. But he was aiming for, we're just going to have good defenders everywhere on the court. And and it wasn't just that. He also built a structure, a small market structure that was, we're going to be a factory of developing this type of player. So whoever we draft, those guys are going to become this. And to me, that's why he was so forward thinking. And it worked out phenomenally because these guys all became, I think, even better than you expected, including Shai. But at least the theory, the blueprint that he was operating under was spot on.
And the surprising part about this is it didn't take that long.
No.
Oklahoma City fans might feel differently because they were living it day to day, but all that stuff, like you said, that happened in 2019. Everybody remembers where they were. It was not that long ago, right?
Yeah.
What a rebuild used to be in the NBA, when you thought about it, it was like, well, are you ready for a decade of misery? That was sort of the narrative around what a rebuild was, and rightly so. But between Oklahoma City, and you can even look at Houston and what they've done since the Harden stuff when they traded him, it's kind of like 5 years if you do it right. Obviously, you can end up not doing it right and end up like Charlotte or whatever. But if you do it right, you can kind of get back into the mix within 5 years. Now, getting in the mix and then winning a championship like the Thunder just did, very different things. But just like even the Thunder were in the mix last year, right? Number 1 seed in the Western Conference going to the playoffs, obviously lost in the second round, but they were right back in it. And in terms of the roster construction part, where he was ahead of his time too, and this is where they're very similar to Boston, where Boston was ahead of the time. You've seen, I'm sure, that the weak link theory out there and how we're in the NBA's era of the weak link kind of era now. Well, they don't have many weak links. That was when they traded Giddey for Caruso. That was sort of the end of the weak link part in their roster. They also are a strong link team because Shai has a legit. Shai was the best player in the league this season. So they have both things, and that's obviously incredibly hard to do.
Incredibly hard, and the fact that they're set up not just for this run, but now you look at them going forward and say all of their players should be better next year than they were. At a minimum, they should be the same. I mean, is Caruso really going to be better? I don't know, but he's not going to be worse. And then you look at J-Dub, he grew throughout these playoffs. He grew from last year's playoffs to this year. He's on the upswing. Chet Holmgren injured. He's going to get better. And then they have all this versatility behind him. I mean, Topic is a guy that I know a lot of people were really, really excited about. He joins their roster next year, as well as all these draft picks that they have. So they're set up for the future. They're built really smartly. They have this unselfish culture about them that's very impressive and enviable. You always think about when a team wins, one of the biggest obstacles that creeps in is the disease of more. I just don't know that that's going to be a thing that hits them. I mean, it hits everybody in some extent, but I don't know if they're going to be hit as hard as some other teams have been in the past. And so, yes, it's foresight. Sam Presti to me this was a Sam Presti championship, and it was his vision culturally, emotionally, as well as obviously from a talent perspective that to me was just so spot on, and it's hard to do.
The disease of more thing is such a great call. I've made this comparison before. I don't know if I've done it on this show or other places, but this Thunder team reminds me of the Florida Panthers that just won the Stanley Cup, which is obviously close to home for me. And in just how unselfish they are. And there's even similar ways in that they play, but I'll skip all of that. But the Panthers won the Stanley Cup, and what I thought was really cool, what they did was they repeated, right? So they won the Stanley Cup last year, and they won it this year. And when they won it this year, the first thing, usually what you do is, you take the Stanley Cup, you go around the ice, and you kind of hold it up to your home fans and all this stuff. And it's usually the team captains and the star players, they do it, and that's what they did last year. But this year, the first people who got the Stanley Cup to do their little spin around the ice were the new guys, the guys who weren't on the roster last year. And I thought that was a really cool, unselfish thing to do. And the captains waited until last to go ahead and have that moment that they deserved. And what I really liked when the Thunder won the finals last year this last night during the ceremony, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander gets the finals MVP trophy, hands it to Jalen Williams, and tells Jalen Williams, "You hold it up. This is just as much as it is yours." Jalen Williams gives it back, starts to hand it back to SGA, and SGA goes, "No, pass that shit around." And the thing starts going around. And I'm like, I love that. That is such an unselfish thing. Shai is the definition of an unselfish superstar. And it's not just saying it. He really does do it. And you talk to even people behind the scenes and people who cover that team every single day, and they're like, no, this stuff is real, man. Like, this is not just bark. Like, this is bite. This is how he does it. This is how he is. And it is so rare that you come across players like that. You cover one in Jokic, right? I covered one briefly in Golden State in Steph Curry. Like, those guys are so rare. And it's when talent meets that ability to set the culture of a locker room, that stuff's really, really cool. And that's when I think about this Thunder team, I think about that in addition to all the other things that we're talking about here.
Yeah, but the difference, Jokic, as much as he is 100% as, that guy, as much as anybody we've ever seen, it isn't the same, I guess, top to bottom for the Nuggets roster the way that it was for this Thunder team. And for the Thunder, it almost seems like it comes easier for everybody else.
Right.
And that's why J-Dub has no, for him, he's like, no, it's you. And so, yeah, man, it's fascinating, to watch it come together. I keep saying this is the first Gen Z champion that we've ever had. It's ahead of schedule because usually the new generation culturally, they don't win till a little bit later in their careers. They're the first team that just feels personality wise like a different generation than the ones that have come before it in some small way. And we'll see how that evolves over time. But so far, it's a little frightening in how much they all seem to be buying into the exact things that made them what they are.
Two more notes on the Thunder before we move on. I said this before, when I think about this Thunder team, it's the best defense I've ever seen. And that's different than saying it's the best defense ever. I don't know about that. Just me, defenses that I've watched. And the first great defense I remember seeing was the early aughts Detroit Pistons.
Yeah.
But I was, what, 13, 14, something.
No,
Like, I wasn't
young
exactly
buck.
going through the NBA.com database and being like, where does their defensive rating rank relative to some of the, like, I wasn't
Right.
doing that. I just remember Ben Wallace being a monster.
Yeah.
This is the best defense that I think I've seen and been able to cover and watch. It's the best defense I've ever seen.
I think it's tough. I'm just to kind of go with you. I think the Pistons comp is kind of interesting because it was a thing where they had great individual defenders, but it was all of them together.
Mhm.
The one thing I'll say is I'm a big believer in that the NBA is building on top of itself, and the game in 2025 is more spread out and, in my opinion, more difficult to defend than it was in 2004. That's not a knock on the Pistons. It's evolved to where now there's more space to cover and it requires more cohesion. And so to me, it is more impressive that they're able to do it at the level that they do because of how it requires everyone to be good and to work together. And they just do it so seamlessly every night. They don't have bad defensive nights. There's not nights where you're like, man, they just didn't bring it. They're good defensively every single night.
Right. And when they needed to win these games, what did they do, right? They go into halftime in Game 7 down 1 after that Nembhard three-pointer at the buzzer, and they come out in the third quarter, and they just start generating steals. It's Lou Dort, it's Alex Caruso, it's Kayson Wallace, it's all these guys doing what they did. They went back to what was comfortable. My second note for them, I think there's a chance for them to be even more dominant next year. Like, it's been covered. We don't have to do the whole thing about how they're so well positioned to potentially have a dynasty here. Like, we kind of already talked about it in terms of their team construction here. But, one of the things when you talk, when you kind of heard like talking head, former players on TV talk about this Thunder team, every so often one of them would say something like, you know what, I'm not a believer in the Thunder. They're too young. And I always sort of thought that was sort of a former player hater type comment. Maybe because they didn't win or because they just, in their experience, you have to be old to win a championship or whatever it was. It's not to say that it wasn't without any credibility, but I think most of sort of like the NBA Twitter yachty kind of thing just sort of dismissed it as a hater comment. It turned out to be true, I think, a little bit at least. Obviously not totally true because they won the championship, but there were times in these playoffs where they looked really young, right? Game 6 against Denver in the second round, multiple times against these Pacers. But the difference, I think, between this young team and other young teams, right? You think about like the Boston Celtics, who were clearly too young to win it until they eventually did, but they kept getting close. This team actually grew in real time.
Yep.
I don't know that this Thunder team was ready to win the championship when the playoffs started, but they became ready to win the championship by the time it ended.
Agreed.
And that is a really cool thing to watch in real time. They went through the adversity. And whatever it is that they've developed, you talk like the culture that Sam Presti and Mark Dagnall and Shai and all these guys have kind of have fostered here. Whatever it was able to carry them through a really challenging, adverse postseason. That was more challenging than I think a lot of people expected. Maybe you want to take some credit away from OKC, not you, but the general you takes credit away from OKC because it went 7 games. It is so hard to win a championship, and this team has never gotten even close to being this close, right? They had not gotten to the Western Conference Finals previous to this. And they grew up in real time and got to the point where they were ready to win a championship. And now there was a little bit of a fake it till you'll make it thing. And I don't even mean that as a pejorative. Like, it was, hey, like we are confident we can win the championship. But you never really know until you do it. And now they go into next year, proof of concept, confident. Hey, we got the belt. We've got the trophy. We know we can do this. And that, to me, feels like a very dangerous team.
I think it's a huge thing to get over the hump, but I love because of the confidence it gives you, which you just said, but I love your point about them growing up in this playoffs. And I credit Alex Caruso more than anybody else because he had an amazing quote. And I actually, in the Nuggets series, Nuggets go up 3-1, or 2-1 in that series when they get the win in game 3. And I just remember Alex Caruso had a quote in there that made me think, OKC is going to actually end up coming back and winning this one. And he said, I told the guys that this series, because they had an easy first round, I told them that this series is going to bring out greatness in us, that this is what it takes to win a title and work down. And that's a great team. And they're good enough to push us to have to be our best self. And, collectively they had quotes like that where it was like, yes, they're viewing this through the exact lens that I think is important. They're not viewing it as, oh my God, we're down or any of that kind of stuff. This was the necessary pain we had to feel for us to be able, like, we're up 68 wins. They hadn't felt pressure in the regular season since December. So they were up by so much in the West that they didn't feel it. And it was like, yeah, but we have to feel it for us to become our best self. So this is like a gift that is going to require us to become what we are. And that's exactly what happened. And the Pacers did it as well. The Pacers forced that out of them, and they just were ready for the challenge. And to your point, they grew up in real time. And I agree. That makes them scarier going into next year, regardless of what happens to the roster in the offseason.
Let's talk Tyrese Halliburton. Your thoughts? What like when that happened and how I blacked out for the rest of the first quarter. I don't remember what happened. How long did it take you to kind of get back into, oh my God, the NBA finals are still happening? I
never recovered from it. I would say, honestly, it was hanging over the entire game.
Yeah,
because of how devastating it is. It's one of the most devastating injuries I've ever seen, in part because we all knew it was the risk. And I'll just get out in front and say, I think Haliburton should have played. I think 99% of athletes would have played in that same spot. And it wasn't that they didn't know that was the major risk, that risk was so high that you were really risking your entire career to play in it. But it's a game 7 of a finals. Most athletes are going to seize that opportunity, even at the cost. So when it happened, it just felt like, when you roll snake eyes at the craps table or something like that, you always know it's a risk. It could happen. But then when it happens, you're like, oh, well, that's the risk. That's what it felt like. It just was unspeakably horrific for a guy who had an all-time playoff run. And I don't remember the last time where actually I do remember, I think it was the 2018 NBA Finals where the runner-up felt like as much of a story as the actual winner. Maybe you go back to 2016 where you felt that way if you don't think 2018. But that solidified. Haliburton's playoff run was iconic, not just in how good he was, but the moments that happened. And it ending in devastating injury to me now solidified that it might be the most memorable thing that happened in all of the 2025 season and playoffs. We'll remember his run and how it ended in tragedy.
I thought about Nirvana, like the band.
Okay.
I don't know if this is disrespectful or not. I don't know if this is disrespectful or not, but is Nirvana considered the ultimate rock band the way that they're considered if Kurt Cobain is still alive?
Oh, I see.
They come out with 3 awesome albums right away. Boom, boom, boom. Right? Nevermind, whatever, all of it. Yeah. And they're just like, wow, he was taken from us so early. And you always just imagine what if. And that's a little bit baked into the Nirvana lore. Right, is like, well, they had these 3. Just imagine. It's like sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes you peak and then again. I don't if that's know. Disrespectful to Kurt Cobain. But
this is Bill Simmons' theory, and I disagree with it. I think Nirvana would have lasted even if Kurt Cobain put out 4 or 5 terrible albums in his 30s. I think they still would have been like, all right, whatever. We'll go back to the good stuff.
We'll just go back to the good stuff. But you would think about them a little bit differently, wouldn't you?
Maybe.
And so with Haliburton, he comes out, hits 3 straight 3-pointers, has whatever it was, 9 points in 5 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever it was. And it looks like he's going toe-to-toe with SGA. And I'm like, oh my God, we're going to get this classic. Everybody's, Haliburton's not aggressive enough, whatever. And he's just going to unload the clip in game 7. And he's going to go toe-to-toe with the MVP scoring champ. And this is going to be a classic game 7. And for him to go down in that way, it does leave a big what if stain all over that game 7 in this season. But between that, the shot at the end of game 1, the heroics he had in every single round, the big shots he kept hitting, it's the never mind of NBA playoff runs. It's just like this iconic thing that it almost can't be besmirched because it ended before it ended too soon on its own, right? It kind of just withered and died on its own a little bit. But absolutely devastating for Haliburton. And you mentioned the fact that he knew the risk. When he goes down and you see him mouthing, I did it to the trainer, he did the thing that they talked about multiple times prior. That's what that means. When you say I did it, everybody has had that conversation. Hey, man, this is 50-50. We don't know what's going to happen. And it was devastating. It was absolutely heartbreaking, and it sucks, and I'm still heartbroken about it. But I'm with you. In a weird way, he can't have any regrets now, because if you don't go out and play Game 7, then you're just wondering, and you lose, you're wondering what if for the rest of your life.
The rest of your life, which would probably be more haunting than whatever the memory will be of this, which will be very haunting. Maybe a better metaphor, equally as maybe offensive or awkward is the mountain and the viper in Game of Thrones, right? The ultimate underdog, but then all of a sudden it's happening, and you're like, oh my God, he's gonna win, and then all of a sudden the most gruesome ending ever, and that's how this felt. And to your point, because they played the replay 100 times. He first looks back, which everybody says is what happens in an Achilles injury, as it feels like you got kicked. And it's almost like he looked back like, what the heck, man? and then looked forward as if, oh, that's nobody's back there. That's exactly what it is. And he knew right away that it happened. The thing we were all afraid of happened. So tragedy. And it might be, to your point, I am curious if the Thunder go on to win a bunch of championships. I think we'll just remember it as the first of the Thunder championships. If they don't, weirdly, the Pacers might be as memorable as the Thunder were this year because of how many iconic moments they had and because of that ending.
It's tough too if you're a Pacers fan right now. I can't even imagine. Not only because your guy goes down in a game 7, a chance to win the championship, the first championship in franchise history, but you lose next season now too. I mean, this is similar to the Tatum injury, in that Tatum was clearly knew what happened in the moment too, and was equally as devastated. Both of these guys, literally tears on their face on the court when it happened. But it's different in that, even the Tatum injury, which happened, what was that, a month and a half ago now? Like, there's still an outside chance that he could come back next year. I don't think it would happen, but there's that outside, like, there is no chance of Haliburton coming back next year. So not only do you lose game 7 and an opportunity to win the championship slips through your fingers now, you're also losing all of next season. And then the way that the NBA is built these days, the team that Haliburton left is probably not going to be the team he comes back to in terms of, guys are going to need contracts, extensions, all these things. Like, the NBA is built to create parity and for teams to kind of change pieces here and there. Who knows? Who knows if they're able to make it this far again?
It could be like Denver when they lost Jamal Murray, cost them 2 playoff runs. And then when he came back, they were more or less the same team and were able to pick up right where they left off. So it is possible.
Totally.
But I would actually bet, and they do have a lot of guys under contract. I mean, Miles Turner is the one that's not. And maybe that changes the decision they were going to have to make this offseason with him. But I also happen to agree with you that even if they retain the same core roster, it will feel different just because the league evolves. And I have a hard time imagining this team. Part of what made this team so special was the magic that they had created. They were more than the sum of their parts. Are you going to be able to slide him back in a year and a half from now and regain that magic? Maybe. And it would be a great story, but maybe not.
If there's a bright side, it's Nembhard has an opportunity to take a leap next year, become the real sort of Jalen Williams of their team. You still have Siakam under contract, whatever, but it's hard to even find a bright side in this right now. Let's switch gears here. Let's talk Kevin Durant. Goes to the Rockets, traded on the day of Game 7. Crazy day in the NBA, but what did you think about the deal for Houston?
I like it. It's I think it's a great deal. Kevin Durant, here's what I think about it, man. And I hate this basketball analysis. I think the audience might roll their eyes a little bit here. I think on paper, this is a home run deal, because Dillon Brooks, I think, was a really important piece of the character of that team. Was he the type of guy that gets him to this point, but is actually a little bit more expendable? It's possible. I actually think that's very possible. Jalen Green, I didn't love. And to me, it's like, okay, they lose the guy I liked least in their main rotation, and they add Kevin Durant. That's an upgrade. The one thing that's and then they kept all of their guys, Cam Whitmore, even like guys that weren't even being able to play, Reed Shepherd. They get to keep those guys either for future moves, or those guys just move up, and now your roster is so deep. So I love the on paper fit. To me, it's a home run, and I would put them in the tier 1 of the Western Conference right now. But there is something about Kevin Durant's last few stops that just give you pause, that the teams have not become better than the sum of their parts with him. And it feels like a hot take to even point that out and suggest it could happen with Houston. But it's the only thing that gives me pause is we'll see if that team becomes something great and special, which is what Oklahoma City became, or if they became an on-paper great team, in actuality, very good team. And
to your point, based on what you gave up, willing to take that risk, right? Because you're 100% right about Dillon Brooks. He's a floor raiser guy, but Memphis found this, and I think even the Rockets found this. It's at some point, there's just a level that he can't hit, and there's a degree of dependability that he just doesn't have, whether in terms of three-point shooting or fouling or whatever it might be, that feels like a swappable piece, and they swapped him. The Jalen Green thing had clearly run its course. The reason I like this trade for Houston is that, to your point, they didn't have to give up any of their things. They could still do all the stuff that they want to do. Heck, they could still trade for Devin Booker if Booker decides, you know what? And they still have all the Phoenix picks. They didn't have to give up any of the Phoenix picks back to the Suns. So that's still a possibility for them. But what I like about it is now that Jalen Green is out, it started, I don't know about you, but it started to feel like towards the end of the year, it was a little your turn, my turn between Jalen Green and Amen Thompson. And it felt like Houston always wanted to kind of give it more to Amen Thompson, but felt like they had to give the rock to Jalen Green a lot. And there weren't a lot of games where they both were playing that well. And I've got Amen Thompson way up here in terms of like ceiling and whatever it is. Like that guy is the future of that team, even after this trade, in my opinion. At least that's the way I think they should handle things. And now that Jalen Green is out, it just gives Amen Thompson more space. And that's, again, with Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is willing to just be like, you're taking the ball? Cool. I'll be over here spacing the floor. Jalen Green never really got to that level, and that's okay. But now with him out, I think it's going to let Amen Thompson kind of grow and blossom into the player that the Rockets are hoping he can, and a lot of people think he can become. And the other great part about this for Amen Thompson and Şengün and Reed Shepherd, all the young guys on the roster, Kevin Durant, I agree with everything you said about him. He's also a pro's pro. All that cliche, first guy in, last guy out, all that stuff, he lives that, man.
Oh, he loves the game.
Covering him in Golden State an hour after shoot-arounds and practices, just going through his own routine, his individual stuff. If Amen Thompson, if Şengün, if Tari Eason, if these guys are going to hit their potential, getting to learn from a guy like Kevin Durant and be like, oh, that's how this is done, not to take anything away from Dylan Brooks or even Fred VanVleet or Ime, but to get that kind of example from an all-time great like Durant, that's going to speak volumes. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the best thing that ever happened to Amen Thompson's career. Maybe a little bit of like what SGA got to get when he had that year with Chris Paul in Oklahoma City. And SGA still talks about how important that was early in his career. And now Amen Thompson is getting a version of that.
Yeah, I like the take. I mean, I love Amen Thompson. I'm as high on him as just about anybody is. The other part about the Kevin Durant, the part that you didn't mention, though, is just the injuries. And I think it's hard to go through. I mean, one of the things I'm thinking about this year, and I think we could have said this for each of the last 3 or 4, is that more than ever, the NBA feels like a war of attrition. Mm-hmm. Because I think you think of like, okay, there's 16 playoff teams and 2 or 3 of them are going to have devastating injuries in the playoffs or, something happened. It feels like almost all of them had some kind of injury in the playoffs. The Thunder really might be the only team that avoided an injury to a key guy throughout the playoffs. And I look at that and I say the odds are almost feel 50-50 about your team starting the playoffs and making it 4 rounds through without an injury. It feels 50-50. When you add a guy who's had injuries and is 37 years old, that feels worse than 50-50. And so that's just the other thing I think about. But they are deep now because they retain so many of those players that I think they're going to be able to survive a regular season with resting guys because of how many players they have.
And they could almost lose KD and not be worse than what they were last year, despite trading pieces for KD, right?
In the regular season, yes.
In the regular season, exactly. Yeah. And so, I don't know. We don't see 37-year-old stars lead teams to championships, but everything's different in the NBA. I don't know what to think anymore. But
same.
You see the odds makers now, and maybe this is just initial reaction to a blockbuster trade. The odds makers have Houston as the number 2 team in the West. I like Houston better. I don't know how you don't like Houston better, at least a little bit right now, but number 2 odds in the West, that seems a little heavy for me. I wouldn't go so far as like they're way above Minnesota, who were 2 straight Western Conference Finals, way ahead of Denver. I still think the Lakers do something, and it feels like with Luka, they should be in that conversation. I don't know that they're that far ahead, but again, that might just be a betting market reaction to a blockbuster trade, just trying to drum up some bets.
I like it. I think it feels appropriate for me, but it is before free agency, the draft,
right?
The trade market. So it does feel a little like those things will change. But at the moment, I look at it and say, yes, Oklahoma City, Houston, they feel like tier 1 to me. And now it's on every other team to build out their roster to make us believe as well.
I didn't have this on the agenda, but I have you here. I might as well ask, like, what do you think Denver does here?
Well, Denver just an hour ago, before recording this, hired actually, they did not hire a general manager. In fact, I'm going to have to get my wording right here. They did something very abnormal in that they are elevating Ben Tenzer, who has been in their front office for 20 years. They're elevating him to vice president of basketball operations. And they are hiring John Wallace from Minnesota. He used to be in Denver's front office, and they're making him executive vice president of player personnel, which does not sound like general manager, but is. So they have this 2-head approach, one that seems like a business guy and one that seems like the roster construction guy, neither of whom seems to be the direct architect. And both of them are first timers at this, elevated role. So what does Denver do? The draft is 2 days away, and they just hired not a GM, but some new thing. I have no idea what they do this offseason. My hunch is they run it back and add a vet or two.
Well, let's talk about on the minimum. Let's talk about the draft then. I have you on.
Okay.
You have your guys. I haven't asked you who your guys are. I know you have some guys that you like in this draft. Last year when we were doing Locked On NBA, one of your guys and my guys was Duran Holmes, who Denver ended up drafting.
Yeah.
You and I both very much liked him. He obviously got hurt. Hopefully he comes back. Maybe he's
another Achilles, by the way.
Oof.
Another Achilles injury.
One thing I didn't mention before, the only good news here is that since Kevin Durant came back from his Achilles injury, it just feels like we think about these things a little bit differently. You remember like when Kobe was at a very different age when he tore his Achilles, but it used to just be a career ender.
Yeah.
And now we literally have the framing of, oh, he's going to miss a year, which totally sucks. It's still heartbreaking, but it's not as dramatic and devastating as it once was, at least in terms of the conversation around it initially. So that's maybe another bright side here if you're a Pacers fan.
There you go.
All right, who's your guy?
Our guys.
Give me a guy.
Well, so first of all, I've done about 20 minutes of draft prep for this season. So this is not like, this will evolve in the coming 48 hours. But I will say this, I'm starting on an easy one. It doesn't count. I am a Cooper Flag guy. And I don't mean that as in like, I think he's going to be, he could be like, oh man, my camera just died on me, huh?
Oh, there you go.
But I am actually extra high on Cooper Flag. I think he's actually made of all the right stuff. So for me, I'm a Cooper Flag guy. I know this doesn't count as my guy because he's everybody's guy, consensus #1 pick, but I am on the higher end of what I think he will become. So, because I know some people are like, oh, he's going to be a high-level role player, this or that. I think he's going to be an elite championship piece. And I could see him being a guy that wins multiple championships, not necessarily as this like consensus MVP caliber player, but just as that kind of player really makes championship teams. So I'm really, really high on Cooper Flag. So I guess I would take him first as my guy, if that counts.
I like it. It's great. All the reporting that you heard out of Team USA camp last year was, oh my God, this guy is such a competitor. And I remember doing some very, very, very like surface level cursory reporting on Victor Wembanyama before he got drafted. And I was talking with his trainer on the phone and I was like, what's the deal? Like, is this guy everything that he's advertised to be, right? Because I wasn't watching, French national team tape or whatever. And he goes, it's better. Like, this guy is such an MFer. He's a killer. That's it's not just the fact that he's 7'6" with all this skill. It's that he really wants to be the best. And you hear all the same stuff about Cooper Flag. And I think that's such an underrated part of all of this stuff. It's the part that we were talking about with guys like Jokic and SGA and Steph. It's if you have that little thing, that little extra emotional edge, that's what makes it, right? The NBA is so hard. It's so hard to win a championship, and you just need guys like that. So I'm with you on Cooper Flag. And everybody knows, you can go to smarter draft people, and they could tell you all the skill stuff and what makes them and this and that and whatever. But, yeah, when I hear stuff like that, he's on my list. Can I give you a guy?
Go for it. You better not take my guy. I should have saved him for the end.
We're definitely going to have – there's going to be an overlap. I just don't know.
We might have the same guys. We like similar players.
Cedric Coward.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
We're safe.
I'm safe here. This guy is one of my guys. 6'6", 7'2" wingspan, a little bit older, but I love the story. Late bloomer, went a little JUCO route, moved up in status and in colleges, transferred to bigger college after bigger college, Washington State this last year. Incredible physical profile and just looks the part of a 3-and-D guy. You look at the numbers, awesome spot up shooter. Doesn't like he's like really smart and efficient in terms of how he moves, not just like percentages and stuff, but doesn't waste time, doesn't waste movement, kind of just gets to his spots, keeps the ball moving, has a little bit of a low post thing going on. So it feels like his game can scale, right? He's not going to be obviously used in the post a whole lot as a rookie. As a rookie, he's going to walk in as a 3-and-D guy. Defensively, can just switchable, versatile, defends all these positions. Very productive defensively. It feels like he can walk in and be a 3-and-D guy right away, and then maybe develop into a guy with a higher usage. And there was already signs, like he got higher and higher usage in college as he transferred and got into bigger programs. And it feels like he could take a similar path in the NBA. So I love all of that stuff with him. But what I really love, again, the interviews, the quotes. The guy's like, I want to be the greatest. I'm a killer. Nobody's friends with me when I'm in between those 4 lines. Like all that cliche stuff that I eat up at. I'm like, I love all of that stuff. Like I am here for all of it. So if you're that guy, you know who he reminds me of? Jimmy Butler. It's a very similar story, similar physical profile, similar in that they don't waste movement. They're very efficient. They have a plan. They're just playing with a higher basketball IQ than their peers. I'm all in on this guy. I don't know where he's going to get picked. Obviously, I hope that he's there at 20 for Miami, but I love this guy.
I like it. The old age thing, too, doesn't bother me nearly as much. And part of this is I don't think teams can make the 9-year plans like they used to. If you're drafting in the top 5, okay, you're hoping your guy is like a cornerstone piece for a while. Everybody else, can they play right away? Can they come in? Are they mature? And you can give them in, hey, 3-4 years, and now they had to move on. That's fine. So I kind of like it. My next guy is these guys are stylistic comps rather than like I'm predicting them to be great. I'm going to go with Derek Queen. Okay. I like a big man with some skill. I'm worried about his 3-point shooting because I think that like if you're going to be a non-rim protection big, you better be able to shoot the ball, and he doesn't for now at least. But when he has all those guard skills, passing, ball handling, it's dances like a dancing bear with his footwork. I eat that stuff up.
It's great. You always run the risk of like, is he Julius Randle? Which isn't bad. Like Julius Randle gets shit on all the time. Like it's not a horrible outcome. Yeah. Or is he something greater? Raphael Barlow, who you and I know, loves Derek Queen. So that's a good pull. Another one of my guys, I'm going Noah Penda here.
Okay.
Not the profile of a player I typically am drawn to.
Okay.
I really don't love these tweener forward types because it just felt for years we were just like, is this the next Draymond? Is this the next Draymond?
Right.
Is this? And I'm like, no, none of them are the next Draymond. Stop. But I like this guy defensively. He led the French league in combined steals and blocks per game. I love production. If you're going to be one of these tweener forward types with the athleticism, like, all right, I don't need it. It can't be all theoretical for me. You have to have some sort of production at some level. And leads the French league in combined steals and blocks per game. When you watch the film, he's so fast to download and react on defense. The off-ball stuff he's doing is beautiful. Super high activity level. He does get over aggressive a lot of times, but he's got that thing where he just makes multiple efforts and can close in on space really quickly. So even if he does get beat, he does a good job of defending from behind and kind of getting back into the play. Thrived in a switching scheme on his French team multiple times of just like getting switched onto a smaller guard and taking care of business there. The swing skill for him, like a lot of guys with his profile, the outside jumper. It's the percentages aren't good, but what I like is that he doesn't shy away from taking them. I like that he's taking them. That means to me that he's putting in the work behind the scenes to be confident about that. And I think it'll just be a matter of time before it starts falling, at least at like a league average rate. He'll never be probably a good 3-point shooter, but it's got to be better than where it is now. My only problem with this is he's like a little doughy. And I hate doing that thing but it's like a little doughy, maybe a little too much French toast there. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm sure the American food though will do him well.
Right, get him into some NBA shape with an American team and a training staff, and I like his upside there at the end of like the first round. Nothing crazy, but he's one of my guys.
The last two guys I'll give you here. I like Nick Clifford out of Colorado State. Some of this is just local, but I think I like these players. One, he's older. And I like players who, play with a high IQ and carry these smaller market colleges, these mid majors.
What's the local buzz around him?
I mean, they loved him, winner, leader, like all of those types of things. So, it's really, really good. And then high IQ, easy to coach, all those different things. And then the skill set seems to lend itself to, again, not being a star, but being the type of guy that you bring into your system. And all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, that guy's giving you good minutes. Can he be a different style player? But like Cason Wallace has been, and a lot of the guys the Thunder have got are young, but older than their age. And I think he projects to be one of those guys. And then lastly, my late first, early second guy, I like Danny Wolf, man. I actually think it's crazy that people, you look at him and think athletically you're worried about this or that. Is he not Kelly Olynyk? He's a baby Jokic, but is he not at least Kelly Olynyk in the NBA?
Yeah, he's a little Kelly Olynyk, a little Josh McRoberts. There's like a little.
I loved McBob.
Yeah, I watched his film and I made two comparisons to him. He's like Franz Wagner trying to do a Paolo Banchero impression.
I'm in. You sold me. I'm in.
Yeah, and he moves like a Roomba. Like there's no upward mobility like with him, but he drives. He gets to the basket all the time. Like it's like, how does this guy keep getting to the rim? And he just sort of low, like just kind of just moves like a Roomba right through the defense.
Roomba.
I love Danny Wolf. Also, awesome name. Feels like the protagonist in a movie about high school basketball.
Totally.
Like in the middle of America somewhere.
Danny Wolf. Yeah.
Danny Wolf leading whatever to the state title. My last guy is Jace Richardson. I love him. Michigan State guard. I love his side-to-side movement. I love everything about him. To me, I don't know why he's not considered one of the better guards in the class. I know that there's issues with his height or whatever, but I like him, and he's just screams to me NBA guard who probably gets a little bit more higher usage than he deserves, and I love those guys. Just like those irrational, confident, microwave scoring guards who you're like, we don't know if he makes us better, but damn it, I enjoy watching him, and I like Jace Richardson for that reason. Adam Mares, thanks so much, man, for joining me. You're one of my guys. You're one of my guys.
Hey, you're one of my guys, man. I gotta hit you up. I'm growing it out. A couple weeks from now, I'm gonna be saying, hey, man, I need some products. You got to give me the style, give me the tutorial.
I gotcha. We'll do a whole TikTok tutorial thing or something.
Perfect.
Thanks for jumping on. Thanks for listening to RealGM Radio. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Check out the All NBA podcast, DNVR Sports, everything that Adam has going on. We'll link to it in the show notes. Thanks for listening. I guess we'll be back here on RealGM Radio after the NBA draft.